So this is the first presentation for Unit 4, the national and international economy. Topic 1 is called economic growth and economic cycle. Let's tackle the first part of this first of all. Let's look at the economic cycle. So what we know is the economic cycle has time on the horizontal axis and GDP on the vertical axis. And what our economic cycle shows is the trend rate of economic growth, so the average over time, and it also shows us our economic cycle, so how our economy fluctuates in the short run. What we can see on this economic cycle are some specific points. We have at the top, peak. We have when things are bad, the trough. When things are picking up, we have a recovery. And when things are starting to go wrong, we have a recession. So we have our 4 different points in our economic cycle. Let's just very quickly talk about what is happening at each of these different points. We can represent our economy by a bathtub. We have our taps. We have our plug. So try and think about the tap. When you turn it on, you're injecting water into the bathtub. You're injecting GDP into the economy. The bathtub is the leakages. It's money flowing out of the economy. Now, what we should now know is that the injections into the economy are investments, government spending, and exports. The free leakages are imports, savings, and taxation. When we're at a peak, the economy is doing extremely well. At this point, we have lots of injections and very few leakages. The economy is starting to overheat. When we're at a peak, we have very high economic growth. We'll have very high employment and therefore hopefully very low unemployment in the economy. But what we can see is from our bathtub, the economy is working its full potential. It's full. We've got very small amounts of spare capacity. Businesses are finding it very difficult to acquire different resources they need. So what we will also get is lots of inflation in the economy. So we can see then that when we're at a peak, the economy is overheating, we're struggling. We've got to try and bring the economy back down again. So that is an unsustainable point. When we're at a trough, the water level this time is very low. Lots of leakages, very few injections. At a trough, we've got low or negative economic growth. We've got very low employment, so unemployment will be very, very high. And potentially what we also have is deflation within the economy. So we can see this time that we've also got some problems. This again is an unsustainable point. What we want to be is on the green line. At this point, we're avoiding the problems of a peak and the problems of a trough. So we're trying to achieve the green line as much as possible. Let's talk now about what can cause changes over the course of the economic cycle. So let's imagine we're at a trough. What can get the economy growing again? I'm going to give you 3 different causes of the economic cycle. One of them is inventories. Another could be external shocks. Another could be government policy. Let's take the most obvious one first of all, government policy. When we're at a peak, we know we've got problems of inflation. To bring the economy down again, the government might start to use contractionary fiscal policy, stick up taxation. If we stick up taxation, what we're doing is we're pulling the plug out of the bath plug. Taxation is increasing, which is leakage, so money is sucking out of the economy. That will help bring the economy back down again. We might also use contractionary monetary policy. So higher interest rates will encourage more saving, which is leakage, and also deter borrowing, which in turn reduces the injection known as investment, brings the economy from a peak back towards a trend rate. At a trough, we know that we've got problems of high unemployment, low economic growth. Here the government might use expansionary policy. For example, fiscal policy, increasing government spending. Government spending is an injection, gives the economy a boost, we have positive multipliers, the economy recovers again. Another cause of the economic cycle, external shocks. When we're at a trough, we know we've got problems of low growth, high unemployment. If another economy across the world that we trade with starts to pick up, starts to do really, really well, they might start demanding more of our goods and services. This means that we get more exports. We've turned the tap on. We've got an injection into the economy which will create positive multiplier effects. At a peak, well, maybe an external shock could be one of our major trading partners falls into a recession. They stop buying our goods and services, which means we turn the tap off, exports start to fall. That could take us through negative multipliers back towards a trough. Inventories. This is an important one that people tend to struggle to understand. When we're at a peak, businesses are starting to get concerned. They know that inflation is picking up. They can see a trough coming. They're speculating that bad times are ahead. Now, businesses have to hold large inventories or large stock levels in anticipation for demand. So when they expect demand to be high, they'll hold high stock. When they expect demand to fall for their products, they will start to reduce their supply. This is all to do with time lags. When they anticipate demand, they want the product to be available for people to buy when they want it. So production is made, decisions that are made ahead of when people want goods and services. Let's imagine we've got a car factory. If they've got a big car park full of cars and they expect recession, what they will do is think, hang on, we're not going to make any more cars now, we're going to sell what we've got. That will mean they're scaling back their production. As they do this, they create unemployment, get rid of some of their workers. They will not buy as many supplies from their suppliers. They lose jobs and businesses. So as unemployment starts to pick up, we head from a peak back towards a trough. Reverse of this, when we're at a trough, businesses will see good times ahead. They've run down their stock levels to more or less nothing. They've got to start to build up stock levels again now to meet demand in the future. This means they take on board more workers. These workers have got more money now, they spend more in the economy. More confidence, more investment in the economy. We start to see positive multipliers and see the economy pick up again. So that is the economic cycle. Let's think now about economic growth. Now what we can do is graph economic growth in the short run, and we can graph it in the long run. In the short run, we call it actual economic growth, whereas in the long run, it is known as potential economic growth. Now let's think about what these two different things mean. What we're going to show first of all is a production possibility boundary diagram. We're going to assume this country can make either product A or B, or a combination of them both. This production possibility boundary line shows the maximum the economy is capable of. Now what we often find in an economy is that there will be some inefficiency, which means the economy might be at point X, producing A1 and B1, working way below its potential. As the economy starts to increase its output, we get actual economic growth. The economy is actually producing more of both products. Actual economic growth. We can show this through an ADAS diagram. So we have price level on the vertical axis, real GDP on the horizontal. If I was to show a classical LRIS curve, that is the production possibility boundary, and it's the maximum the economy is capable of making. We have AD, we have SRAS. We've got our equilibrium point. If AD was to increase to the right, we can see that the economy will get closer to its potential at Y star. We can also see that if SRAS, so AD moving that way, if SRAS was to move to the right, maybe due to lower production costs, then again, we're actually producing more within our economy. Now, as this happens, what we should see is an increase in growth. Output has grown from Y1, getting closer to Y star. This should create more employment, which also is beneficial for the economy. What we can also see, though, especially if demand is increasing to the right, what we will potentially get is an increase in scarcity. As the economy gets close to its PPB line, we will potentially get inflation. So actual economic growth is only sustainable to a certain point. As we start getting too close to Y star, we're heading towards a boom. The bath water is too high in the bath. This will mean we start to get inflation. So generally, actual economic growth on its own cannot be used long term. Only can be used short term to deal with fluctuations in the economic cycle. Long run economic growth is different. The PPB shows the potential of the economy. It doesn't mean we're achieving it, but it means it's the potential. It's the most we can possibly do. If the PPB was to increase, this is what we call potential economic growth. It doesn't mean we're achieving it, but it will mean that our bathtub has got bigger, so we're capable of making more. If we graph this in a diagram, if the economy was operating at P1Y1, they'll be operating here in our PPB, inefficiency. If we can increase LRIS to the right, normally through expansionary policies, so more spending on education, healthcare, for example, more supply side policies, then the potential of the economy will increase. This will alleviate scarcity problems and should start to bring down inflation again. So this is done through expansionary supply side policies such as spending on education, healthcare, spending on the transport network, more research and development into technology. All these different things will boost the potential of the economy. Now, what I want to bring in now, and this is the last part of this topic, are what we call positive output gaps and negative output gaps. A negative output gap occurs when the economy's potential increases more than the actual economic growth. So if LRIS is shifting more than our equilibrium point to the right, then we have a negative output gap. If actual economic growth is increasing more than the potential, then we have a positive output gap. Very, very last thing that I forgot to mention actually here in this topic is economic growth a good or a bad thing or not? So if we try and increase our economy's size, is it a good thing or not? So is growth good? Okay, now we know that the good things of increased economic growth will be more jobs. We know that more employment means that the government will receive more tax revenue. This will mean there's more spending available to improve supply side policies such as education and healthcare. It also means lower unemployment means that more people are contributing higher tax revenue. It means then people are no longer receiving employment benefits. We know that growth will boost investment in the economy. So overall, what it should mean is that more people are able to satisfy more wants and needs, which equals more economic welfare. However, bad points. We also know that growing economic growth means we're exploiting more of our natural resources. This in turn might mean lower sustainability, i.e. what we do today may impact negatively on people in the future. Less resources for in the future. We may also see growing externalities, so more pollution, for example, more traffic on the roads. This might equal down economic welfare. So what we would say is overall, economic growth is only good if it leads to up welfare. Now, a better measurement of this, rather than using GDP, is HDI, which is a measurement of living standards in terms of literacy rates, life expectancy, and average wages. This is a better measurement of living standards than GDP. So although GDP being higher means we can buy more, HDI, Human Development Index, will actually measure impacts on our living standards in greater detail.